So welcome back, guys. Hello if you are new. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. So this is another installment of my Apocalyptic Anniversaries series, and normally there are 2 of these every month, but for this one there's just the one, and it's a big one. So I really think that throughout every sort of late 20-year-old kind of turning 30, you kind of go through this rite of passage, which is getting into a band like Neurosis. So perhaps one of the most oppressive albums ever released, and one that actually ignited a whole new movement that was post-metal, you could argue. Through Silver in Blood is an absolute landmark album. It is dense, it's powerful, it's full of rage, but also has a real weird catharsis to it. So join me today as I'm talking about the 25th anniversary of this fantastic record. So if you're kind of not really familiar with Neurosis, as I was for many, many years, Neurosis are a band that kind of combine they created post-metal, a lot of people say, but they combine elements of post-metal, sludge, punk, hardcore, and on some albums, noise and kind of more avant-garde sort of stylings, really. It is intense because it has to be. During that time, Scott Kelly was struggling with addiction and also homelessness as well. And you can really hear that sense of, frustration and turmoil really kind of in the inner workings of Through Silver in Blood. A lot of those are very primal. And what for me enhances that sense of primal nature is very much kind of a repetition. As I was talking, it's like the drums are very, very simplistic, but they keep repeating and they get heavier and heavier. And so do the riffs in many, many cases. So I kind of gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and then it just all kind of stops. And there's this kind of really serene, eerie sense of silence when we go into Purify. Of course, a lot has to be said for the vocals as well, and Scott Kelly and Steve Von Till are a dynamic duo, but for me, I think maybe one of the standout moments has to be on Enclosure in Flame, where it literally sounds like, I'm not sure if it's Kelly or if it's Von Till, but either of them sound like they're about to fucking disintegrate. There's kind of unorthodox sounds and instruments that the band incorporate. So you've got that sort of like headstock ring, which is in the main sort of riff of Purify. And then you've also got these bagpipes, which sound like they're sort of at the end of the world. And even on another track, a sense of like, almost like a xylophone kind of thing. And after that, you've got the kind of sound effects that they put in. There's that mechanical, but also very industrial sounding. And I mean industrial sort of like, Industrial Revolution, like very primitive sounding on Through Silver in Blood. But then you've got the voices on Rehumanize and also Become the Ocean. It's very kind of atmospheric all the same time. And then thirdly, it's the way that I think sound is distributed. So like there are some parts where if you listen to it with headphones in, it pans really, really quickly. And it adds to that sense of a loss of control and kind of a bit of confusion really with the listener. And all of these kind of elements combined bring the music to become a bit more physical and really do kind of give you a sense that you are at Neurosis's mercy, really. However, though, of course, this is 100% about the absolutely earth-shattering riffs, and there are some amazing displays on here. You can kind of literally pick any song. Yet as torturous and kind of demoralizing as Through Silver and Blood is, there are moments where you have this real sense of cathartic release, and the penultimate track, Aeon, I think is a great example of that. Throughout the album, there's a perfect balance of this atom-devouringly heavy, but then this really eerie, calm, quiet, sort of serene that you get. I think there's a sense of stillness, in particularly, between the tracks. Like, so when you're going from I to Purify, and then almost the way that the melody sort of hangs in Enclosure in Flame, there's something about that that just makes you feel slightly uneasy. And Strength of the Fates is a great example of that as well. It's a weirdly disarming thing for the listener, and I think it's because you can't quite necessarily predict. And also it sounds like you're just sort of swirling in this vortex of like tortured screams and looking at this in an incredibly meta way, Through Silver and Blood almost requires the listener to become part of the final piece of the puzzle. This vitriol has to have a vessel or a host, so by you listening to it, you kind of open up this world of Through Silver and Blood. Only then can it kind of come alive and reach its true potential, otherwise it remains dormant. Through Silver and Blood is an album quite unlike anything else we'll ever experience in music. It's raw, uncompromising, and possibly the definition of the heaviest album of all time. So thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my sort of trip down memory lane. I'd love to know what your memories are, your thoughts of Through Silver and Blood. So take care of yourselves, and I'll see you very, very soon.